Hey guys, this is Dr. Denny Warren. In this video, I want to share with you some foundational information as far as our diet is concerned. Now, I also want you to think of this in terms of holistic health, because the human body is holistic when you're talking about health. So that means it's important what your social relationships are like. It's important how you're managing and dealing with stress. It's also important how you're moving and walking and exercising and expending energy. But it's very, very important how your diet is. And as you'll see in some of the other videos I've talked about too, it's very important how your frame and how your posture and how the mobility of your entire body, that's all part of the puzzle, the holistic puzzle that's going to keep you healthy. So really this video is a foundational video for diet, but it's also one that builds off of a video I did before on epigenetics. So I strongly encourage you that if you have not seen epigenetics video, go back and watch that after this video, because that's all about the science and how your lifestyle, how you eat, how you move and how you think, how your social relationships, how you deal with stress, all of those things can change the gene expression inside your DNA. So it can express wonderful healthy genes, or you can express genes that are trying to adapt to that sick lifestyle that you have, and it causes you to become sick over time. And it's going to cause you to express like heart disease gene, breast cancer gene, diabetes gene, a hangover gene, all these different genes. It's going to cause you to express those because you have a sick lifestyle that's causing the expression of those genes. So when we talk about diet, I always want to talk about first is I want to recommend a diet that's going to be the healthiest diet that you can possibly have for your family and for yourself. And when you want to try to find the healthiest diet possible, you need to find the people groups, the populations, the tribes that are the healthiest ever identified in the world. And so whenever I talk about diet, I go first to what was the healthiest people ever that we've ever identified in the world, and what did they eat? It wasn't the Chinese, it wasn't Americans, it wasn't vegan or vegetarians. What was it? It was a hunter-gatherer tribes. There's still tribes that are around today that have a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. So these are tribes that they would hunt everything, just like the word says, just like the name says. They would hunt everything on their land. They'd also gather everything from the land, and they would eat that food, and they would live off of that food. So it's eating real food. It's not packaged. It's not processed. It's eating real food. Now let me back up. One thing I just said was it's not processed. It was processed because they would cook things with fire. Human beings, that's what makes us very unique versus other animal species, is we can use fire to cook our food. And that is processing your food. But it's not adding a bunch of chemicals, it's not adding a bunch of preservatives, it's not adding all of this junk, this food dyes that when we think of processed food like white flour, white sugar, all these added chemicals and things that are inside it. It's none of that. They never had any of that. There's no tribe that ever had any of that, and you can't find that grows from the earth, that is wandering on the earth. So let's talk about a hunter-gatherer diet, and I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about a herder-farmer diet. And then other videos will go into more specifics, because if somebody has digestive issues, if somebody has autoimmune disease, so if somebody has different disease processes going in their body, they might have to fine-tune these two types of diets in order to get the best results for their health. But these are foundational information right here. So a hunter-gatherer diet, also a lot of people know this, is called a paleo diet. A hunter-gatherer diet consists of fruits and veggies, nuts and seeds, and lean healthy meats. That's it. You might notice there's a couple things that most of us eat on a regular basis that they didn't have any of. That was dairy. So you're looking at milk, you're looking at cheeses, you're looking at butters. That's also grains. So corn, wheat, oats, soy, a lot of these grains, which is actually in our day and age, it's really good because most of those are genetically modified, which causes even more problems to your health. We'll talk about that in just a second. But with a hunter-gatherer diet, you're doing fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and lean healthy meat. Now, a lot of times when people recommend a hunter-gatherer, or what's called a paleo diet, it's the same thing, that they think, well, I have to eat a lot of meat. I have to eat a ton of meat. I want to take just a moment to kind of break down a couple of different tribes. And so you understand there's a wide variety even within the paleo diet. If you look at the Eskimos that lived up in the tundra, the Eskimos were mostly meat and fat. So they're eating seal, whales, they're eating fish, cold water fish. The tundra was frozen most of the year, so they couldn't even grow anything. So 95 to 98% of their diet was meat and fat, whereas 5 to 10% was from fruits and vegetables, mostly berries that could grow in the tundra would thaw. So they had hardly any vegetables at all, but they were still very, very healthy because of the quality of the food they ate. The quality of the food and the bone marrow and all these different things that they ate the whole animal, not just the muscle tissue. The quality of the food that they ate was very, very important. So yes, there were tribes that had majority meat and very little fruits and vegetables. But if you compare that versus tribes that were in Africa, there's tribes in Africa that were close to 90 to 95% fruits and vegetables, mostly root vegetables. And then they would have 5 to 10% meat, 5 to 10%. So that's getting really close to what a lot of people would call like in vegetarianism, there's different types. There could be an ovitarian, a pescatarian. There's several different types. This allows them to eat eggs, this allows them to eat fish or chicken, different types of meat, but they limit their meat consumption to like maybe 5% or less. And that's very similar to what a lot of these tribes in Africa were eating. So these people that are eating an ovitarian or a pescatarian type diet, vegetarian diet, is still, you could consider that a hunter-gatherer diet because there's tribes that had that. But no matter what hunter-gatherer population they looked at around the world, every single population did have meat in their diet. Some was up to 95%, some was as low as 5%. So there still was meat in every single one, but that was something that was consistent across all of these different tribes around the world. And again, these were the healthiest people ever identified. So you might be saying right now, you might be somebody who would thrive more on that African style diet where you have mostly fruits and vegetables and maybe 5 to 10% meat. Or maybe if you like to exercise a lot and lift heavy weights and break down your muscle tissues to rebuild that muscle tissue, maybe you need to add more meat into your diet. So maybe you get to 30, 40% meat or more. So it's going to be different depending on each person. It's going to be different depending on your activity levels and what kind of stage in your life you're at. So keep that in mind. Don't get locked into something because you want to be able to flux in and out of things. You want to be able to eat with things in season and eat with things as they go out of season. So things will change as you go along, and that's okay. So hunter-gatherer diet, that's really the foundational diet. Paleo diet is really a foundational diet that we recommend for our patients because it's the healthiest populations ever identified. Now, what happened when different tribes did start to introduce dairy? They started to realize that they could domesticate the cattle, they could domesticate these animals, and start to get the raw dairy from these cows that were 100% grass-fed cows. These were animals that were eating what they were supposed to eat. And so what they did is they got raw dairy from these cows, not pasteurized dairy, but raw dairy. And that had tons of nutrients and it was full of fat, a lot of great nutrients, really good for the body. But the grains that they had, it was fermented, soaked, or sprouted grains. So when you start to think of your wheat, your oats, your corn, your soy, a lot of these, if you can do this type of process, you can ferment, soak, sprout your grains, then you're going to be actually able to digest those better because these processes start the digestion process. If you look at sprouted grains, fermented grains, sprouted grains is like Ezekiel bread. Fermented grains, an example would be sourdough bread. So you make this dough and you put a culture of bacteria in the dough and you let that dough sit for 7 days. You're constantly feeding it with water and more wheat and different things for the culture to consume. So that bacteria over 7 days before you bake that bread, it's actually digesting a lot of the proteins. In wheat, one of the biggest proteins is the gluten proteins, which is a very tightly woven protein. And when you have the fermentation process going on in the wheat, in the dough, it's actually starting to open up those proteins. It's starting to digest that protein before you eat it and digest it. So the bacteria is starting the work for you. And so there's so many people that are sensitive to gluten these days. And if they just had fermented, soaked, or sprouted breads, most of those people would be able to handle it. I'm not saying have it every single day, because again, I want this to be the foundation over here. But when you do have bread, when you do have grains, try to get it fermented, soaked, or sprouted. That's going to make it easier for your body to digest, easier for your body to absorb the nutrients and assimilate those nutrients into a healthy body. So this is a great process. Also, dairy. In Arkansas, you can actually get raw dairy from the farm. Now, you want to make sure it's someone that has really clean practices. You also want to make sure it's someone who has grass-fed, grass-finished. It's 100% grass-fed animals. That's the healthiest, the best way to get your dairy or get your meats as well, is to have it be grass-fed dairy. And you can get it raw, and you can consume the butter full fat, consume the dairy full fat. That's going to give a lot of great nutrients to your body. Now again, I'm not saying have this every single day, because I have butter on a consistent basis. We'll have some cheese, but I hardly ever have milk. I just don't drink much milk. So again, I stay with this over here, and I come back and forth here. So again, it's very important if you understand these, because hunter-gatherer populations were the healthiest populations ever identified. The populations that were considered herder farmers, so they were growing the crops, they were growing the grains, and they're also domesticating the animals, having the dairy. This group was really, really healthy, much healthier than anything we have in our modern world, but they weren't quite as healthy as the hunter-gatherer populations. So again, gold standard, really great option, but still this is the gold standard, the best of the best that you can get. So whenever I recommend diet, we're going back off of this. If you are going to bounce around to these things, you can have these every now and then. We're just not going to have them all the time. And here's a little side note that I want to leave you with, and as we go into the next video. If you have celiac disease, this is where I talk about specific, when things are more specific. So if you have an autoimmune disease, celiac disease, or you have intestinal problems, you have to be very careful how you eat veggies. Oftentimes you need to cook those down so your intestines, it takes a lot of the work off of your digestive system, so it's easier to break down. But with grains, like with wheat, if you have celiac disease, I wouldn't even have fermented, soaked, or sprouted. I would just completely 100% stay away from grains, stay away from bread and wheat for the rest of your life. You're never going to be able to have that. But again, that's where we go into another video. In the next video, I'm actually going to go into what's called autoimmune protocol diet. It's based off of this, but it takes out some of the most common foods that people can be sensitive or allergic to. So again, foundational information here, but then we can start to build off of this. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have questions, let me know. I also have a printout in my office. I can email you a full printout that gives you a really good understanding of what a paleo or hunter-gatherer type diet is. And there's tons of books out there that you can look at, books like Whole30. You can look at tons of paleo cookbooks and blogs online. There's so many things out there that help you with this. But again, this is foundational. Then we can start to get into some more specifics. We'll see you in the next video. I hope you have a great day.